Why sleep matters. More after 70. Good evening. Or rather, let me ask you this. Do you actually know when you should be going to bed? Because if you're over 70 and you've been following the same sleep schedule you had at 40 or 50, I need you to stop what you're doing right now. Because what I'm about to share with you could genuinely change the quality of every single day you live from this point forward. I'm Dr. Daniel Hayes, and after more than 2 decades working with patients in their 70s, 80s, and even 90s, I can tell you with complete confidence that bedtime is one of the most underestimated health decisions a senior can make. Not the food you eat, not the supplements you take, the exact hour hits that pillow. And most doctors, including many I've worked alongside, never bring this up during a 15-minute appointment. Here's what stopped me in my tracks a few years ago. A landmark study published by researchers at University College London, tracking over 88,000 adults using wrist-worn accelerometers, found that people who went to sleep between 10 and 11 p.m. had a significantly lower risk of developing cardiovascular disease, up to 25% lower compared to those who slept earlier or later. 25%. That is not a small number. That is the difference between a heart attack and a Sunday morning walk with your grandchildren. And here's what I want you to stay for, because we're going to count down from number 5 all the way to number 1. And number 1 is something that genuinely shocked me when I first read the research. It has to do with a specific 1-hour window that if you miss it consistently after the age of 70, your brain literally begins to clear toxic waste less efficiently. We're how aging changes sleep patterns. Talking about a biological cleaning cycle that happens only during sleep, and the timing determines whether it works or fails. You do not want to miss that. But before we dive into the full countdown, I want to ask you something personal. Leave a comment below telling me your age and what time you currently go to bed. I read every single comment on this channel, everyone, and I would love to know what your current routine looks like. And if this kind of content is helping you, please tap that like button right now. It genuinely helps us reach more seniors who need this information. All right, let's get into it. 5 reasons the timing of your bedtime after 70 matters more than you think. Counted down from least to most powerful. Number 5, going to bed too late accelerates inflammation in the aging body. And inflammation is the silent engine behind almost every disease that threatens your independence after 70. Here's something most people don't realize. When you were 35, your body had a remarkable ability to keep inflammation in check overnight. Sleep acted like a reset button. Your immune system recalibrated, inflammatory proteins called cytokines were regulated, and you woke up feeling relatively restored. But after 70, that reset process becomes significantly more fragile. Research from the Sleep Research Society has shown that adults over 65 who consistently go to bed after midnight show measurably higher levels of a protein called C-reactive protein, a key marker of systemic inflammation compared to those who retire before 11 p.m. We're talking about inflammatory markers that are up to 30% more elevated in late sleepers. Now, why does this matter specifically for aging bodies? Think of inflammation like a small fire burning in your living room. When you're young, your body has a full fire department, fast, well-equipped. What time should seniors actually go to bed? Responsive. After 70, that fire department has fewer trucks, slower response times, and less water in the tank. Going to bed late is like leaving that fire unattended for longer each night. Over months and years, it scorches the walls of your blood vessels, damages your joints, clouds your brain, and quietly erodes your quality of life in ways that don't show up until it's already gone quite far. I had a patient, a remarkable woman named Dorothy, 76 years old, from Albuquerque, New Mexico. She came to me complaining of joint stiffness every morning so severe it took her nearly an hour before she could move comfortably. She'd been going to bed around 1 a.m. for years because she enjoyed late-night television. We didn't change her diet. We didn't add a single medication. We simply moved her bedtime to 10:30 p.m. Within 6 weeks, she told me the morning stiffness had reduced by more than half. Within 3 months, she was gardening again. She cried when she told me that. The practical guidance here is straightforward. If you are over 70, aim to be in bed with the lights off no later than 11 p.m. and ideally between 10 and 10:30. The anti-inflammatory benefits of sleep are most powerful during the early nighttime hours, when your body's cortisol levels are naturally at their lowest. Pairing this with an anti-inflammatory evening snack, think a small handful of walnuts or a few bites of tart cherries can amplify the effect, because both contain compounds that further suppress those inflammatory pathways overnight. Number 4. The wrong bedtime disrupts your body's hormone orchestra, and after 70, your hormones are already playing with half the instruments missing. Let me explain what happens hormonally when you sleep at the right time versus the wrong time, because this is where things get genuinely fascinating. Human growth hormone, and I know the word growth sounds like something only teenagers care about, is actually profoundly important for seniors. It helps preserve muscle mass, supports tissue repair, and keeps your metabolism functional. And here is the critical part. The largest and most powerful surge of human growth hormone occurs during the first deep sleep cycle of the night, typically within the first 90 minutes of falling asleep. Research, published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism, found that the connection between sleep and brain health adults over 65 who had disrupted or delayed sleep onset, meaning they were going to bed late and struggling to fall asleep quickly, showed growth hormone secretion levels up to 75% lower than those with consistent early sleep patterns. 75% lower. After 70, your body already produces significantly less growth hormone than it did at 50. Delaying your bedtime effectively shuts down one of the few remaining mechanisms your body has for overnight repair. Think of it like this. Imagine your body at night is a construction crew that arrives to fix the roads, your muscles, your bones, your cellular walls. That crew only works during a specific shift. If you push back bedtime, the crew arrives late. The foreman has already gone home and far less repair work gets done before sunrise. Night after night, year after year, you accumulate a deficit of repair that eventually shows up as frailty, weakness, and the kind of fatigue that doesn't go away no matter how long you sleep. There's a synergy tip here that many people miss entirely. The amino acid glycine found naturally in bone broth has been shown in studies from the Japanese National Institutes of Health to significantly improve sleep onset speed and increase the duration of deep sleep, the exact phase where growth hormone is released. A warm cup of bone broth an hour before your target bedtime between 10 and 10:30 p.m. can meaningfully support this hormonal window. It's one of the simplest and most underused tools I recommend to patients. This is a good moment to pause and say, if you're finding this valuable, please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We put out content specifically designed for people over 60 who want real evidence-based information about living longer and living better. Hit that subscribe button and the bell so you never miss a video. Now back to the countdown. Number 3, going to bed at the wrong time destroys your circadian rhythm. And after 70, a broken circadian rhythm is one of the fastest paths to cognitive decline. I want to spend a little extra time here because this is something I feel very strongly about. Your circadian rhythm is your body's internal 24-hour clock. It governs not just sleep, but hormone. How sleep impacts heart health release, immune function, blood pressure, digestion, and critically brain health. After 70, the circadian system naturally begins to shift. The suprachiasmatic nucleus, that's the tiny cluster of neurons in your brain that acts as your master clock, loses some of its precision. In plain language, your internal clock becomes less reliable. And when you layer a chaotic bedtime on top of an already weakening clock, the consequences for brain health can be severe. A large-scale study from Duke University involving over 1,600 adults aged 65 and older found that those with inconsistent sleep timing, meaning their bedtime varied by more than an hour from night to night, had significantly greater cognitive decline over a 5-year follow-up period. The researchers noted that circadian disruption was associated with increased accumulation of amyloid plaques, the sticky proteins in the brain associated with Alzheimer's disease. This brings me to what I promised you at the beginning, the glymphatic system. This is the brain's waste-clearing system discovered only about 15 years ago by researchers at the University of Rochester. During sleep, particularly deep non-REM sleep, the spaces between brain cells actually expand by up to 60%, and cerebrospinal fluid floods through flushing out toxic debris, including amyloid beta and tau proteins. It's one of the most remarkable things the brain does, and it happens almost exclusively during sleep. But here's the catch. This cleaning cycle is most active during the hours of 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. for most adults over 70 based on their naturally advanced circadian phase. If you are going to bed at midnight or 1 a.m., you are cutting into the very window your brain needs to clean itself. Do common sleep mistakes. Older adults make that for years, and the cumulative buildup of toxic proteins inside your brain is not theoretical. It is measurable, and it is dangerous. I think about a patient I saw several years ago. His name was Harold, 79 years old from Portland, Oregon. He was a retired engineer, sharp man, funny, proud of his mind. His daughter brought him in because she'd noticed him repeating stories, losing words mid-sentence, becoming confused about appointments. His bedtime had drifted to 12:30 a.m. over the years because he struggled to fall asleep earlier. We worked with him on what's called sleep timing therapy, gradually moving his bedtime earlier by 15 minutes every few days, combined with morning light exposure to reset his circadian anchor. At 6 months, his daughter called me. She said he seemed like himself again. His word retrieval had improved. He was reading again. I am not telling you that sleep timing cures Alzheimer's. I want to be very clear about that. But I am telling you that protecting the glymphatic window may be one of the most important things you can do for your brain after 70. Full scientific references for everything I'm discussing today are linked in the description below. The practical step here is to aim for a consistent bedtime, ideally between 9:30 and 10:30 p.m. every night of the week, including weekends. Consistency is the key word. Your circadian rhythm responds to repetition. It is a biological habit. The more consistently you anchor your sleep to the same time, the stronger and more precise your internal clock becomes even as you age. Number 2, the exact bedtime window after 70 that protects your heart. And most seniors are missing it by 90 minutes or more. Let me come back to that University College London foods, drinks, and habits that affect sleep study I mentioned at the very beginning, because I want to go deeper into what it actually found. The researchers analyzed data from 88,026 participants using wrist-worn accelerometers that track sleep onset with precision. They controlled for age, body weight, physical activity, smoking status, and existing health conditions. And the results were striking. Falling asleep between 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. was associated with the lowest risk of cardiovascular disease. Those who fell asleep before 10 p.m. had a 24% higher risk. Those who fell asleep between 11 p.m. and midnight had a 12% higher risk. And those who fell asleep after midnight had a 25% higher risk. Why does this window exist? The researchers believe it relates to the body's exposure to morning light and its relationship to circadian health. Falling asleep significantly before 10 p.m. often means waking in the early hours of the morning, missing critical late sleep, and disrupting the natural cortisol awakening response. Falling asleep after 11 p.m. means the body is still processing blue light stimulation, emotional arousal from evening activities, and elevated core body temperature, all of which stress the cardiovascular system during its most vulnerable overnight window. After 70, your heart is navigating a much narrower margin of error. Your baroreceptors, the sensors that regulate blood pressure during position, changes become less responsive. Your heart rate variability, which is a measure of cardiac flexibility and resilience, decreases. Your arteries become stiffer. All of this means that the quality and timing of overnight cardiovascular recovery become dramatically more important than they were at 50. Think of your aging heart like a high-mileage engine. It can still perform beautifully, but it needs exactly the right conditions for creating the perfect sleep environment. Overnight maintenance. Give it those conditions consistently, and it can carry you for decades more. A synergy note here. Research from the American Journal of Hypertension suggests that taking any prescribed blood pressure medications at bedtime rather than in the morning resulted in significantly better blood pressure control overnight and was associated with a 45% lower risk of cardiovascular events. If you take blood pressure medication, that is absolutely a conversation worth having with your own doctor. I mention it here because the timing of your medication, like the timing of your sleep, is part of the same cardiovascular protection story. I want to tell you about a man named Robert, 74 years old, from Nashville, Tennessee. Robert came to me after a minor cardiac event, nothing catastrophic, but a warning. He'd been going to bed around midnight most nights, watching the news and then late-night shows before finally shutting his eyes. We restructured his entire evening. News off by 8:30 p.m. Lights dimmed by 9. In bed by 10:15. Within 4 months, his resting blood pressure had dropped by 11 points. Systolic without any medication change. His cardiologist was impressed. Robert told me he felt calmer, more stable, like the anxiety that had been following him around since his cardiac scare had finally lifted. Sleep timing, I told him, is cardiovascular medicine. He believed me after that. And now, number 1, the most powerful reason that bedtime timing after 70 matters more than almost anything else your doctor has probably told you. And this one connects everything we've discussed into a single urgent truth. Number 1, missing your optimal sleep window after 70 accelerates biological aging at the cellular level, and the research daily activities that improve nighttime sleep suggests the damage compounds every single year you ignore it. Inside every cell in your body, at the very tips of your chromosomes, there are structures called telomeres. Think of them like the plastic caps at the ends of shoelaces. They protect the genetic material inside from fraying and damage. Every time a cell divides, telomeres get slightly shorter. When they become too short, the cell either dies or enters a dysfunctional state called senescence. And senescent cells are now understood to be major drivers of aging, inflammation, and disease. The length of your telomeres is one of the most reliable biological markers of how fast you are aging on the inside, regardless of what your birth certificate says. A landmark study from the University of California, San Francisco, examined telomere length in adults over 65 in relation to their sleep patterns. They found that those with poor sleep quality and inconsistent sleep timing had significantly shorter telomeres, equivalent to being biologically between 8 and 12 years older than their actual age. 8 to 12 years. That is not a rounding error. That is the difference between a 74-year-old body and an 86-year-old body, driven in meaningful part by what time you go to bed and how consistently you protect that window. But here's what makes this number 1 on our list, and why I find it so profound. Telomere shortening is not just a consequence of bad sleep. It creates a vicious cycle. Short telomeres impair the very cellular machinery that is supposed to regulate sleep. So poor sleep timing shortens your telomeres, and short telomeres make your sleep worse, which shortens your telomeres further. It is a biological downward spiral, and after 70, when your telomeres are already shorter than they were at 40, you have far less buffer against this cycle. Now for the extraordinary part, and I want to be careful here to represent the science accurately, while also giving you a doctor-recommended evening routine genuine hope. Research published in the journal Aging Cell found that consistent improvements in sleep quality and timing were associated with measurable increases in telomere length over time, particularly in older adults who had previously had poor sleep habits. In other words, it is not too late. Your body retains a remarkable capacity for repair if you give it the conditions it needs. The key word in all of this research is consistency. One good night of sleep does not move the needle, but 90 nights of going to bed between 10 and 10:30 p.m. in a dark, cool room after a calming evening routine that begins to move the biological dial in a meaningful direction. Let me tell you about Margaret. She was 82 years old when I first met her from a small town in Vermont, and she was one of the most determined patients I've ever had. She'd been a night owl her entire adult life, bed at 1 a.m. up at 9. Always said she was just wired that way. After a difficult year that included a fall, a hospitalization, and what she described as feeling like she was aging and fast forward, her daughter found my work and brought Margaret in to talk. We had an honest conversation about what the research shows. Margaret was not a woman who responded to vague encouragement. She wanted the data. So I gave it to her. I explained telomeres. I explained the glymphatic system. I explained the cardiovascular window. She listened carefully, asked several very pointed questions, and then said, "And I will never forget this." She said, "Well, that sounds like the stupidest mistake I've been making for 30 years. Let's fix it." Over the next 4 months, we moved Margaret's bedtime from 1 a.m. to 10:15 p.m., using gradual 15-minute increments every 5 days. We added a signs you're getting quality sleep specific evening window wound protocol, no overhead lights after 8:30, a warm bath at 9, a short gratitude journal entry, and a consistent bedroom temperature of around 67 degrees Fahrenheit, which research from the National Sleep Foundation identifies as close to optimal for older adults. At 4 months, Margaret's daughter reported that her mother had not fallen once. Her reaction time on standard tests had improved measurably, but more than the numbers. Margaret told me she felt like herself again, not the tired, slow version of herself that had started to accept diminishment as inevitable, but the real version, the one who had opinions and energy and things she still wanted to do. That is what this is really about. Not bedtime for its own sake, not sleep hygiene as a checkbox. This is about protecting the you that still has so much living to do. Let me bring all of this together because I think it deserves a moment of honest reflection. After 70, your body is not failing, it is adapting, but it needs you to adapt with it. The same sleep schedule that served you at 45 is no longer adequate because your biology has changed in ways that demand more precision, more consistency, and more respect for the natural rhythms your body is trying to maintain. Going to bed between 10 and 10:30 p.m. consistently, in a cool and dark environment after a calming evening routine, that is not a small lifestyle tweak. Based on everything the research now shows us, that decision touches your inflammation levels, your hormonal repair cycles, healthy sleep habits for long-term wellness, your cardiovascular health, your brain's ability to clean itself, and the very speed at which your cells are aging. Miss that window consistently, and the compounding cost is real. Honor it consistently, and the compounding benefit is equally real. You are not too old for this to matter. You are not too set in your ways for this to change. Dorothy got her garden back, Harold got his words back, Robert got his calm back, Margaret got herself back. And none of them were young. None of them had easy roads. They simply decided that the years ahead deserved to be better than the years behind. And they made one change that quietly transformed everything else. I believe the same is possible for you. Not someday. Starting tonight. If this video gave you something to think about, something real, something you're going to carry into your evening tonight, please subscribe to this channel right now if you haven't already. We are here every week with content grounded in science and dedicated to the 60 and older community, because you deserve access to the same quality of information that's sitting in medical journals that most people never see. And leave me a comment. Tell me your age. Tell me what time you currently go to bed. And tell me after watching this whether you're going to try shifting that window. I read every comment, every single one. Your story matters to me and to everyone else in this community who is on the same journey. The links to all the scientific studies referenced in this video are in the description below. Please share this with someone you love who might need to hear it. Good night, final thoughts and key takeaways, and go to bed on